Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Essential Tremor Virtual Education Forum. My name is Patrick McCartney. I'm the Executive Director of the International Essential Tremor Foundation. Today, we're going to be hearing from Praxis Precision Medicines, one of our newest corporate partners, and including some information on their upcoming trial. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our corporate partners, Medtronic, Abbott, Incytec, Sage Therapeutics, Jazz Pharmaceuticals, Cala Health, Boston Scientific, and Praxis Precision Medicines. Their support allows us to provide these webinars, our podcast series, and hopefully in the near future, our quarterly in-person education forums. So I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. Our speaker today is Gabi Belfort. Gabi is a Vice President of Clinical Sciences at Praxis and is responsible for conducting clinical trials in the Movement Disorders Program. Gabi's been in the industry for 9 years and with Praxis for 3. Before coming to biotech, Gabi earned an MD and a Ph.D. at Boston University, trained in neurology at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston, and completed a postdoctoral fellowship in neuroscience at MIT. Gabi, welcome. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited about hearing your presentation. So I'm going to turn it over to you.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Patrick, and the larger IETF community for having us speak today. Again, my name is Gabi Belfort. I am a medical director and the vice president here at Praxis Precision Medicines. And again, thank you all for joining me today, and thank you for having me. Praxis is a clinical stage biopharmaceutical company that is, as we say, daring for more. And what we mean by that is we're really trying to do as much as we can to try to help patients. So, I'm sorry, I'm having a little trouble with the slide. All right, so yeah, this is just to thank the IETF for having me, as I said earlier, but now just to jump into the discussion. All right, so let's get to know Praxis. So let me tell you a little bit more about our commitment to innovation that is really guided by patients like you. It doesn't make sense for us to make medicines that don't work for patients and make your lives better. And so we're really interested in getting to know you and how essential tremor impacts you better. So the reality that we're beginning to understand is that ET really affects you on a daily basis. And so we're bringing not just Prax 944, but yet another medicine forward called Prax 114 into clinical trials. And I'll be talking a little bit about that as we go through the course of the talk today. Ultimately, we're working to get therapies to people like you as quickly as possible. All right, so let's move a little bit forward here. So what do we mean when I say that we dare for more? What we mean is that we're really trying to focus on turning patients into folks who are empowered with renewed readiness to live fully. For movement disorders like essential tremor, this means that we aim to be fearlessly committed to providing people a world without limitations, free to move when, where, and how they want. We bring a new understanding of long neglected diseases like ET and fresh hope and excitement for patients to live fully and on their own terms. So I'm going to jump forward now and talk a little bit about neuroscience. So we think about the brain using the following cartoon. So there are diseases where there's overactivity of the brain, and certainly there are diseases where there is less activity of the brain. So talking a little bit about genetics and how we understand differences in people's genomes affecting this overactivity or underactivity, that's a really kind of core guiding principle to how Praxis picks indications that we're going to go after and how we think about helping patients with these conditions. So we're focused on diseases in particular of the central nervous system that are characterized by overactivity, and you can see that in your everyday. Certainly the movements that characterize essential tremor are a good example of too much activity. So, and we know through research that has been conducted at various labs around the world that patients with essential tremor have too much activity in their brains. And so what we're trying to do with Prax 944 is try to reduce that activity and return it to something a little bit more normal. So I'll say a couple more words about the company generally, and then we'll focus more on Prax 944 and our ET programs. So what you're seeing here is basically the pipeline at Praxis, and it shows a broad portfolio of highly differentiated programs across multiple CNS indications. We have a molecule at the top called Prax 114, which we're developing for mood disorders, including depression and post-traumatic stress disorder. And then under that is Prax 114 and Prax 944. We are following the science to pioneer new options for people with CNS disorders so they don't have to settle. Recognizing the need for improved therapies in ET and that there really hasn't been a new medicine approved by the FDA since the 1970s, we're actually not developing one, but as I said earlier, two compounds, one known as Prax 944 and the other one known as Prax 114. And you see that in the middle of the slide in blue and orange, those two molecules we're bringing forward into ET studies right now. Each uses a different target approach based on scientific insights and brain biology. And by exploring more than one option, we really hope to bring greater opportunity to meet the needs of the ET community. Both 944 and 114 are investigational medicines. This means they will be studied in clinical trials and are not yet approved by regulatory agencies, including the FDA. Clinical trials are a critical part of scientific advancement, and new therapies can't be developed without the involvement of people in this process. And that includes you, the patients with ET. And it's really important that if you can, that you volunteer for clinical trials so that we can help bring new medicines to the broader community. So today we'll be focusing more on Prax 944 and a new phase 2 clinical trial known as Essential 1. And I'll be talking more about that as I advance through these slides. All right, so the next series of slides are really about what we've learned about the ET community and about your needs. Of course, we have more to learn, but I want to talk a little bit about what we've learned to date. So we've been listening, we've been doing forums, talking to various different chapters of the IETF, but also to researchers and scientists across the country and throughout the world. And so it's really important that we integrate with advocacy group leaders and people living with ET in order to better understand how we can help develop a medicine that works well for them. So we know that ET is the most common movement disorder, impacting millions of people in the US. Up to 7 million Americans are impacted with ET. And as many of you know, it is characterized by a tremor or shaking, especially in the hands, that you can't control. And it often gets worse over time. And individuals can experience disease progression differently. And for some people, that's a particularly scary aspect of the disease. ET can disrupt people's daily activities, such as drinking or eating soup, or using keys, or putting money into a wallet, or dressing. And we know that that is a particularly difficult part of ET and a potentially embarrassing part of ET. And we know that these aspects of essential tremor lead to unpredictability in your lives and cause stress and anxiety and depression. And we really are driven. In fact, it is our North Star to try to help alleviate these symptoms. So please help us understand even more as we move forward. All right, so to talk about the next slide. So an estimated 70% of people with ET are undiagnosed, misdiagnosed, or untreated. So we know that only 2 million Americans with ET are diagnosed. And as I said on the previous slide, 7 million Americans have the disease. So that means 5 million Americans, up to 70% of people with the condition, are undiagnosed or misdiagnosed and are not receiving treatment. So there's a huge gap to be filled. And we think bringing a new medicine to market could really help with that. So to move to the next slide, current therapies may not meet the needs of people with ET. So there's a lot to be said here. So we know that the available therapies include propranolol, which is FDA approved, and then there's some off-label use of other medicines, and surgical options are available as well, but they carry the risks of surgery. But then just to always say that that the current treatments we're aware don't always work very well for people with ET. And that many therapies for ET often have side effects, which means people with ET may start taking them and they help, but then they have to stop taking them because of the side effects. Many people with ET are also limited in their treatment choices because of potential interactions with a bunch of medicines that they're taking. And it's important to note that all therapies currently used for ET were not developed for ET. So generally speaking, these were medicines developed to treat other diseases, but the medical community noticed, and really the patients noticed, that they may help with ET symptoms. So we've heard from our ongoing conversations with members of the ET community that people with ET are seeking therapies that can improve their ability to function during the day and that they can take over the long term, particularly because ET is progressive. These needs are a key focus for us at Praxis. So let's look ahead and talk a little bit about the science that Praxis is pursuing to try to develop new medicines for patients with ET. So let's talk about what Prax 944 actually does. So in essential tremor, we know that the neurons that deliver messages to the parts of the body are overly active, and I talked about that earlier. And they tend to be active in a particular way, in what's called a rhythmic or oscillatory way. So they're active, they're inactive, they're active, they're inactive, in a way that you can imagine the brain is actually driving the tremor in the hands and in other parts of the body, because the circuits in the brain are active in that sort of rhythmic way as well, in a sort of tremulous way, you can imagine. So our target, the molecule that Prax 944 blocks, is actually present. It's an ion channel called the T-type calcium channel, and it's present in those very circuits that are showing that oscillatory rhythmic activity in the brain. And we know that that rhythmic activity in the brain is abnormal and drives the tremor. So our hope is, if we can block this ion channel in those neurons that are showing that abnormal activity, then we can reduce that activity and reduce the tremor. This is the scientific rationale behind our investigational medicine, Prax 944. So before going into the details of the slide, I just have to say I love this picture. It's my favorite picture in all of our slides, because this gentleman clearly has great stories to tell, and we want to hear them. But just to get back to it, Prax 944 is being developed with ET patients in mind. It's designed to block the T-type calcium channel, particularly in the circuits that drive the tremor, and the purpose of the development plan is to help participants first in the studies, and then subsequently the larger community regain control of their lives. And we recognize that some of the unmet needs of people with ET, we also formulated 944 as a once daily therapy. And we know that some of the medicines need to be taken many times a day, which can really cause a lot of burden on the patients. We're currently studying Prax 944 in what is known as phase 2 clinical trials, which we think is so exciting for the ET community, given some of the unmet needs we discussed earlier. So let's talk a little bit more about the Essential1 study. This is our current study being conducted in the United States and Canada. And I'm going to tell you a few just basic details about what clinical trials are before giving you a ton more detail on what the Essential1 study is. So as mentioned earlier, clinical trials are a critical part of scientific advancement and introducing new therapies for people impacted by disease. They are carefully designed, reviewed, and completed, and they need to be approved by health regulatory agencies. So in the United States, that's the Food and Drug Administration. Clinical trials are described really in three phases. In phase one, these are smaller studies, often in groups less than 100 people. And the purpose is to judge the safety and tolerability of the drug at particular dosages before going into patient populations. Phase two studies tend to be between 100 and 300 people. And this is the first assessment of efficacy of the drug. Does it work? Does it actually reduce tremor? Now, to be very clear, the measurement and continuous observation of safety never stops throughout the clinical trials. So in phase one, phase two, phase three, we're always looking to assess the safety of the drug, and that continues through phase two. Now, if a drug works well in phase two, generally speaking, phase three studies then occur, and these tend to be much larger, between several hundred participants to even up to thousands of participants. Again, these participants will have essential tremor or the disease in question, and it's really based upon these phase three studies that the FDA makes the final decision on whether or not to approve the medicine. So let's talk, having given you this background, a little bit more about what Essential 1 is. So Essential 1, phase 2 study, evaluating Prax 944, again, an oral investigational medicine, to see if it can reduce symptoms of essential tremor. So the Essential 1 study is looking at signs that Prax 944 is having an effect in people who are diagnosed with ET and who have moderate to severe tremor, and how these responses differ based on the different doses being studied. It is also looking at the safety of 944 in these patients. Our hope is that together, these data can help us select what we think is the best dose for future phase 3 studies and work with the FDA to bring a new medicine to patients with essential tremor. So who qualifies to participate in such a study? Like all clinical trials, there is a specific list of criteria, and some of the key ones that will gate eligibility into the Essential 1 study are listed here. We want to make sure we're looking at a group of people that can really help inform whether or not Prax 944 will help the broader ET community. So we want to make sure that the population is diverse enough to help facilitate with that kind of investigation. We also want to minimize anything that may interfere with understanding the potential impact of an investigational medicine. So as an example, a participant who has an ET but might have some surgical limitation of their arm wouldn't be a great candidate because you couldn't really assess the tremor in the arm that had that surgical intervention. So that's just an example of an exclusion criteria. These are some of the key criteria you must meet in order to be considered eligible to participate in the trial, but these are not all of them. So if you're interested in the study, we'll provide information at the end of this talk for how you can get a hold of Praxis or find further information out about the Essential 1 study. But please speak with your healthcare provider if you're interested in participating. Another thing you can do is visit essential1.com. That's essential, ESSENTIAL 1, the number 1.com. And we'll provide that link again at the end of this talk. So what can a participant in the study expect when they join the study? So typically we divide a study up into 3 phases. There's a screening phase, which is our opportunity to look at eligibility. There's the treatment phase where the participant would be administered the drug. And then the third part is the follow-up phase where we're just making sure that the participant, when they've stopped taking the drug, is doing okay and can go on and resume their life safely. So this study will last up to 14 weeks. The first 4 weeks are taken up with this screening phase, and there might be 1 or 2 office visits during that screening phase. In the treatment phase, Prax 944 is administered over an 8-week period. This will involve 5 office visits and some telephone check-ins to ensure that everything is going okay. Participants will need to complete assessments of their tremor, either at home or in the clinic. The follow-up period is a 2-week period and includes 1 visit at the end of it. During this time, your healthcare provider will evaluate your essential tremor symptoms and overall health. I should be clear, when I said a healthcare provider there, what I meant was the investigator in the study. A smaller group of participants may also participate in a sub-study here called the wearable device sub-study. This is a wearable device. It's kind of like a sticker. It goes on the back of the hand, and it provides data on tremor in a longer period of time than a single site visit. So this can collect data over days instead of over just a few hours. The device will only need to be worn for 3 days prior to the first visit, and including the first visit, and then for two other periods during the study, each for 3 days. So if you qualify for the study and decide to participate, you'll receive the study medication at no cost and all study-related care at no cost, and we'll closely monitor you with a study doctor and the study staff. And then the opportunity to advance medical knowledge is a key contribution that participants make in clinical trials. And so you'd be helping us advance a medicine towards marketing and giving it to patients more broadly in the community. Very important point here to make in italics at the bottom of the slide is that your privacy will be maintained throughout. So Praxis never learns of your name if you participate in the study or specific information that can be used to identify. So let's talk about some common questions that come up by people who participate in clinical trials. You should always talk to your doctor about clinical trials, if they may be an option for you and any questions you may have. However, I wanted to address a couple of key questions on the next slide. So do you have to participate? And the answer to that is a big no. You do not have to participate in the clinical trial. Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped to the second one first. The first question is, do I have to pay to participate? The answer is no. We cover all the costs for that. So, and then to jump quickly to the second question, which I'm obviously eager to answer, is, can I withdraw from the study after I have started? And the answer to that is yes, you can withdraw. You are not obligated to participate in clinical research. Your participation in the research study is entirely voluntary, and you may withdraw at any time. If you decide to withdraw early, you will be asked to notify the study staff before doing so and return to the clinic at least once to complete a final visit and return any unused study drug. You may also be asked to continue attending study visits without taking the study drug, but you will never be required to do so. Finally, some participants want to know what happens to their personal information. And the answer is the study staff respects and protects your privacy and will not share your information except as required by law, and will store your personal information with codes that do not identify you. The informed consent form will provide more information about how your privacy will be maintained. All right, so now how can you get involved in the Essential One study? So I want to thank you all for joining me today and your interest in learning more. And these are the ways you can get involved in the study. So please talk to your doctor. That's the best person to talk to about getting involved in a clinical trial. If you're interested in learning more about Essential One, there's the website here. Or if you want to reach Praxis directly, there's an email right here, clinicaltrials@praxismedicines.com. You are welcome to email us at any time. It's important to note that more sites will continue to be added over the course of the next 6 to 9 months. So please have a look out. If there's not a site in your local area right now, please revisit our website, reach out to us again periodically. We may have added a site that's close to you. Also, if the trial involves a physician other than your own doctor, you could still participate. Let your doctor know that you're thinking about joining a clinical trial. They may want to talk to the research team about your health, make sure the study's good match for you, and to coordinate your care while you are in the study. So lastly, I just want to say thank you again to Patrick for the introduction and to the broader IETF community for having me here today to speak to you about the important work we're doing trying to develop new medicines for the ET community. Again, please reach out to us at the email provided on the previous slide, and come see us at praxismedicines.com and find out more about all the great work we're doing to try to develop new medicines for patients who we know really need them. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Gabi. That was some great information. Thank you for taking the time today to share that with us, share with us about Praxis, and share with us about the upcoming trial. We hope everyone found this presentation very helpful, and hopefully you learned something new today. And just so our audience knows, the IETF will be partnering with Praxis on sharing information on these clinical trials. So if there is a trial in your area and you're in our database and one of our contacts, we will be reaching out to you to let you know how to participate. We'll also have information on our website at essentialtremor.org if you want to learn more and sign up for it that way. If you have any questions regarding essential tremor, please visit the IETF website at essentialtremor.org, or you can call us toll free at 888-387-3667. And finally, if you are a donor to the IETF, we thank you for your support. If you aren't currently a donor, please consider a gift to help us continue the work we do promoting ET awareness, education, support, and research. We will be hosting some of these webinars over these events in the upcoming months. So please keep an eye out on your notices for these events in your email, on our social media, and our e-newsletter, Tremogram, and in our Tremor Talk magazine to find out more about these upcoming events. And you can also get recordings and listen to recordings of past webinars and or podcasts on our website. So Gabi, thank you again for joining us today. We look forward to working with you guys in Praxis on getting the word out about this trial and hopefully getting a new treatment on the market. Hope everyone has a great day. And again, thank you again for joining us, Gabi.
My pleasure, and thank you so much again for having me.